All right, very good afternoon. We will get started with today's session. It is exactly 2 p.m. South African time on Wednesday, the 10th of July, 2024. I would like to welcome everybody to today's shared learning session. The session is part 3 of the 4Ps Culture Framework series that has been facilitated by international thought leader, Mr. Mike Jose. So I'd like to obviously welcome everybody to today's session. My name is Sean Ellis, and I'll be facilitating the session in the background. I'd just like to remind everybody, you will see the QR code on the screen during the session. That is for you to register, just so we've got accurate, accurate information of everybody involved in today's session. In terms of the disclaimer, BMA takes no responsibility for any decisions made as a result of these events, but obviously it's always our intention to make sure that these events are as value-adding as possible, but ultimately any decisions that companies make or individuals make is at your own cognizance. It's also important that we always seek to adhere to the competition law, and in that regard, it's important that we declare that no agreement, concerted practice or decision will be taken and implemented that will involve directly or indirectly fixing a purchase or selling price or other related trading condition in the market. So I think most of you are familiar with the competition law, and it's just always important to state that we will always endeavour to adhere to the rules of the competition law in South Africa. It's also important to state that these particular events would not take place without the support of our various funders. In that regard, we must acknowledge that our clusters are all public-private partnerships. And when I say our clusters, I'm referring to the Durban Automotive Cluster, the Durban Chemicals Cluster, the KwaZulu-Natal Clothing and Textile Cluster, the eThekwini Furniture Cluster, the East Cape Automotive Industry Forum, the Cape Clothing and Textile Cluster, as well as the South African Automotive Benchmarking Club. Those clusters are obviously highly dependent on the private sector, and the majority of you involved in today's event, comprise the private sector, but we also need to acknowledge the participation and support of the public sector, who are our primary funders. In that regard, we would like to make special acknowledgement of the eThekwini municipality, the province of the Eastern Cape, as well as Invest Cape Town and City of Cape Town in the Western Cape for their ongoing support. In terms of today's session, as I've already highlighted, it's going to focus on the third P of the 4P cultural framework. The first 2 sessions focus on purpose and process, with today's session focusing on people, and then the 4th session to focus on problem solving. So Mike Jose is going to touch on the third P, which is people, which some would argue is probably the most important element of any company, in any organization. So obviously a lot of interest in today's session, and we're really looking forward to Mike's insights. We'll obviously, as always, have a Q&A and discussion session at the end. And in that regard, I'd obviously like to encourage everybody to utilize the chat or the Q&A functions in Zoom during the session. And we will definitely look at coming back to any questions that you have highlighted, but you'll also be given an opportunity to raise your virtual hand at the end and ask Mike specific questions in relation to the content that he has covered. Again, here is the registration QR code, and you will see it again later on. And you'll also see within my presentations, I like to include a light bulb. And the intention there is to really encourage each of you to really look at taking some value from today's session. What is the new idea, the new way of thinking that you have taken away? And in that regard, I would obviously argue that the onus is on you to try and make sure that you, seek out those gems from today's session. So, actively look at, extracting as much value from today's session, both in terms of what Mike covers, but also in terms of asking relevant questions. Just to recap what we've done thus far this year in terms of shared learning, we had some sessions at the start of the year on renewable energy and on managing supply chains. We also had some sessions in March and May, respectively, on attendance excellence and getting back to lean at Bell Equipment. And obviously, we're currently rolling out the 4P session with Mike. The final session is scheduled for the 21st of August, so it's a bit of a break. but obviously looking forward to having everybody participate in that session. Also, just a reminder, these sessions are recorded, so if you've missed anything, you are obviously able to go back and derive value from those sessions. And if you haven't been receiving any of the output comms, please do not hesitate to engage with us in that regard, and we'll ensure that the necessary recordings are sent through to you, as well as a summary of the key elements. I just want to also mention that we have now scheduled an event for the 1st of August, so in a few weeks' time, and this in essence is on carbon reduction. It's basically how do firms implement a strategy around getting to a net zero position. So this session will take place on the 1st of August. We have posted the invite link in the chat. It may not be that relevant for some of you, but I'm sure it's relevant for all of your organizations. So please feel free to forward the invite onto the necessary individuals in your company, because this is a very pertinent and important topic that firms are starting to grapple with. Brunton Consulting, a company that works in the sustainability field, will be participating. We've also got our head of sustainability at BMA, O'Neill Murray, who will be involved. And we're also looking at getting a company to participate to share from their side insights what they're doing in this particular space. All right, and then just mentioning again, we've got a WhatsApp group which firms can join as well to get insight in terms of what's taking place. All right, so let's jump straight into it. I've given the introduction to Mike in previous sessions, so I don't think I need to spend any more time. Just once again, I'd like to thank Mike for assisting us and participating in these sessions. And as mentioned, I'm really looking forward to getting his insights in relation to this very important topic in relation to the 4Ps framework. So Mike, I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to you to take it away.
Very good. Thank you, Sean. And thank you all for joining again. And as Sean mentioned, this is session number 3. So we're halfway through. So we definitely appreciate your questions and engagement, because that tells me that you're looking to apply it, as Sean said. So the new idea, the new thinking, and I always challenge my in-person classes on new behaviors. So what behavior will change for your individual behavior for leaders, and also organizational? What system will you look to improve? So we'll talk more about systems today as well, with your role in the people value stream, as we call it. So again, I usually start these sessions with reviewing the first couple, but Sean and BMA do such a good job of sending out those summaries. I read the summary from session 2 yesterday, so really good. So if you haven't done that, I encourage you to do that. I also got a couple questions from last time that I'm going to work into both today and session number 4, because a couple of them had to do with the people topic, and a couple of them had to do with KPIs, which is more our problem solving topic in August. So let's kick it off with the people discussion. And as Sean said, and I like it, some would argue it's the most important element. And Toyota would argue that, and Toyota has decided that. So remember, we talked about in session number 1 that intentional culture and making very clear your true north, and what's important to the organization, what behaviors should be happening. I don't remember if we talked about the Toyota production system in detail. I know I didn't have the house, but the Toyota production system talks about Jidoka and just-in-time, and Jidoka is the built-in quality, and of course the just-in-time is the getting the right part there at the right quantity at the right time. But Toyota says which one wins there in their intentional culture, and quality wins over productivity. So that was always very clear to us. And the and-on that we talked about last time, that was the equalizer, so to speak, that made sure that quality is over productivity. And there's a tension there, as anybody in manufacturing knows. And there was always a tension there at Toyota. That's why it's important to say what's the winner, so to speak. Now that we looked at the Toyota Way house, I know last time, and if you remember the 2 pillars, I hope you remember the 2 pillars. Again, I'm not trying to get you to copy the Toyota Way, but I'm trying to get you to understand the process that Toyota used for their intentional culture and the continual plan, do, check, act of that culture. So the two pillars were continuous improvement and respect for people. And again, you have to say which one wins. So like Sean said, many would argue that people win. Well, Toyota, there is no argument Toyota, because they declared a winner. They said the respect for people overtakes the product, the process, the business, whatever we want to call it. And so that's critical. I know one of the questions that was from asked last time is, how do we do this culture in South Africa with the different ideologies and the different societal things? And it reminded me of a question I've got in a conference before on, what's Toyota's next big thing? What's the next thing beyond TPS or beyond lean or something? And my answer to that was now I've been 37 years now at Toyota and part of them, working with them, and now as a contractor there. And I always say, tell me when respect for people and continuous improvement is going to go out of style. Like that, those are principles that are, to me, eternal. And so I would answer again the question about South African culture specifically the same way. And in Sean's summary of session number 2, it said, state the non-negotiables, right? Be intentional on those non-negotiables. And so the non-negotiables of Toyota culture was that respect for people. And so I don't really care where you are in the world, or I've been throughout the world, including South Africa, and tell me when respect for people is going to go out of business or go out of style. So everybody wants to be respected. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to feel validated, valuable, and then again, be able to contribute, to have their ideas heard and understood and contributed. So those are non-negotiables again of the Toyota culture, and I hope you consider them a non-negotiable for your culture, because I believe the same way when Toyota had a unionized environment, with the partnership with General Motors, it was the exact same thing on that partnership, that mutual trust and respect, and that win-win. And we talked about a win-win again being people development. So that's again a good segue. But that respect for people, I thought, was a good one to start with, because again we had a couple questions that were kind of targeted towards that. Now we'll talk more about the people development and the plan, do, check, act of that within our intentional culture. All right, so we have, we talked about value stream last time, value stream mapping, taking the product all the way through from the in to the out. And I think I talked about the hospital, even example of the emergency room going in and out. So we have that product or service value stream. And then at Toyota, again, we focused on our people value stream. And how do we bring again the people together with that product to make the highest quality, lowest cost, shortest amount of time? So the people value stream, again, as leaders, we were taught at Toyota, again, the value add, the people are making the product or service that your customers are paying for. That's why we work for them. Our role is creating quality people. Again, ones that are contributing. So that's the end in mind, right? We don't build cars as leaders, we build people, is what we were taught. And so that's the people value stream. So then if we go back to the inputs, we talked about the inputs in session 1, that's the true north, again, respect for people, etc. So now how do we attract? And I used to say, how do we attract the best people here? But I've changed my definition because of questions I've had from people. How do we attract the best fitting people for our culture? Then how do we develop them and then how do we have them engage, right, in the current role, which we're going to be talking about, and then how do we have them enroll, kind of going towards that next role, and have that continual cycle going for the lifetime, for the course of the career. So how do we attract the best fit? So again, if there's no standard, there's no problem. So we have to define what it is we're trying to fit to. So that goes back to our first session with our, what's everybody's role, and everybody's a problem solver. Our leaders, our coaches and teachers, everybody's working in a team. Everybody's respecting everybody with those values. So that becomes the standard. So now we can evaluate applicants based on that standard. And then we will select them again that they match that standard. So again, keep that in mind. So we're setting the standard. Now we're going to attract the people who fit there, and now we're going to work towards achieving it. So I learned at Toyota, HR has a very different role than other HR departments that I have been, in contact with or worked with. So the organizational competency, so determining the role, that's a biggie. A lot of times I'll go in organizations and I'll ask, show me the role of your, they'll have job descriptions. We didn't have job descriptions at Toyota. We had roles. And again, there was, for our, what we call, non-exempt team members or hourly team members, in Kentucky, we had 8,000 people, 6,500 of them were hourly. We only had 4 titles or 4 roles: a production team member, production team leader, skilled trades team member, skilled trades team leader. I've been in organizations that have had, dozens of descriptions and job descriptions and levels and all these different things. And so there was a couple purposes for that. One was we wanted flexibility across that, anybody could rotate anywhere that had that same role, and it's not my job, that's their job, and that type. But we didn't want any of that conversation. And then we wanted, again, that role to be very general and intentional, so that we could develop everybody to that role. So the organizational competencies are, again, like we've talked about, that come from the true north intentional culture: problem solving, teaching and coaching, problem solving, teamwork, respect for people. Those are those competencies. So HR has a role in that. Now, again, so that people value stream. So here's another quick summary of that. So again, how do we hire people that demonstrate those competencies? Then how do we develop and train them? How do we evaluate, promote, recognize, compensate, all reinforcing those behaviors and those competencies? Again, problem solving, teamwork, coaching, etc. We also have, HR's got to be in there for the fairness and consistency of the policies, and HR being a check and balance. I'll talk a little bit more about that, and that plan, do, check, act culture. So we'll talk about that. Again, kind of people understand that with the product, and I think I mentioned that last time, that if you have a standard for the gap on the 2 doors of a car, then I can check that, and then I can respond accordingly. Same thing with our people. So once we get our roles of our team member, our team leader, our supervisor, etc., then we can check, and we can say okay or no good, it's being followed or not being followed, and then we can adjust it to get closer to that standard. So that's what HR does, again, by setting the standard of what's the role or the behavior, checking if they're happening, and then adjusting to get it to happen. Again, it's simple, but by no means is it easy. But again, the concept of plan, do, check, act is a simple concept. We set the standard, we check to see if it's happening, and we adjust if it's not. So again, do you have a role for your people? And this is a general role. And this is a long way to say plan, do, check, act, right? So we go and see. Now that that again is pointed out specifically and intentionally. And I've learned that with other organizations, when I see supervisors sitting at a desk, or I see managers, sitting in a meeting room or something, we didn't have, the supervisors were on the floor. The team leaders had stand-up desks. The standard were supervisors to be at the floor at the Gemba, right? We talked about 100% of the time. Meetings were before shift or lunch or after shift. Managers are expected to go to the Gemba. So that's part of that role. So we'll come back even in August on session 4 when we talk about problem solving. And again, that plan, do, check, act. So leader standard work will come right from these roles. So if part of a role is to go and see, then we need to check that with our leader standard work. Is that happening? So then we do our plan, do, check, act in 2 through 4. So we say define normal. So again, that's I guess a different way to say set the standard, define what should be happening, right? Then we go and check and see the current situation, and do we have abnormalities or do we have gaps? And then if we have gaps, then we solve the problem. But I'll catch that there in number 3, we're teaching. Remember, we said the role of the leaders is not just to do problem solving themselves, but to teach and coach their team to do problem solving or plan, do, check it. So this slide, I love this slide. I helped develop it with Lean Enterprise Institute. The work of leaders, I should say leaders there, it's better, it's not the term managers, but the work of leaders. So develop systems and people to set like we just said, to do plan, do, check, act, to set standards, identify and correct out of standard conditions. So now catch that systems. So that's my key point on this slide, because the last slide we already talked about everybody's problem solving. Leaders are teaching and coaching problem solving, but now we have our systems. Now remember session 1, we talked about the Shingo model, and we talked about working on the systems to drive the behaviors towards our intentional culture that also then drive the results that we need. And then if we're not getting the behaviors we're wanting, remember we said then you go back and you look at the systems and adjust the systems. So there we got our systems. So when I'm in face-to-face class, I always give an example. So I have somebody raise their hand. So Sean, let's use an example. So if Sean, like we said, we want you to leave here with some new thinking and some new actions. So if Sean understands his job is to problem solve, and we'll talk about that in depth next session, and he goes back to his organization, he starts problem solving, then hey, great, we've got one person that we've impacted for the better. But if we say Sean's role as a leader is to teach and coach, not just problem solve himself, but to teach and coach his 4 or 5 people to problem solve. So Sean goes back to his organization, does his problem solving, but at the same time, he's coaching and teaching his 5, 10 people to problem solve. Now, how many people have we impacted and Sean impacted? Now it's him plus his team, 4, 5, 10 people, whatever it is. Great, it's better. But what if Sean goes back to his organization, not only problem solves himself, not only teaches and coaches his team of 5, 10 people to problem solve, but he looks at the systems and works at the systems of his organization, of how the organization develops people to problem solve and develops leaders how to coach and teach problem solving. Now, how many people has Sean impacted? Well, his entire organization. So that's where the leverage comes from. So that's where we said session 1, we want you to work on the system, not in the system. Working in the system would be you're going to problem solve and you're going to teach and coach your people to problem solve. Working on the system, again, is they get the rest of the organization doing that. So I hope you catch the power of that. And I don't know if I mentioned last time I had one aha moment from person in the class that I get it. My job is not just me problem solve, but my whole, and not just my whole team, but to get my whole organization problem solving. Can you, and he's all excited. Like, can you imagine the power of my team if I can get the whole organization solving problems? Yes, that's the goal, right? That's the intentional culture. Oh, no, okay, we're good. Well, no, wait a minute. Did I have a repeat then? Oh, I do have a repeat. All right, so I have a repeat. So reinforce it again. So there's the same slide, different, or same words, different slides. I do like the little scale on this one. And actually that scale is wrong. The money should not overtake the heart. Remember we said the people have to overtake. So I just found an out of standard picture. So we said like the people win, not the money, not the business. And that's showing that money's winning there. So we got to change that scale. That's no good, that picture. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I do when I have HR people, but again, kind of give you a little bit of insight to the systems, right? So again, using our logic that we said, hey, we wanted an intentional culture where everybody's problem solving and leaders are teachers and coaches. All right, that sounds good on the poster. But now we got to bring it to our hiring and promotion system. So we actually hire people based on that. Then we actually promote people based on that. So again, you have to excuse me if because these things all blend together. You know, we have the 4 Ps so that we can have the topics and the key points, but it all blends together in the system. And so if I repeat, I apologize. I don't want to leave anything out, that's for sure. But I don't remember if I told you, you know, again, my role as a leader at Toyota, I didn't have the power or authority to hire anybody, to promote anybody, or to fire anybody. That was the system did that. So HR owned those systems. I had input into those systems. I didn't own that system. So why don't you want me hiring anybody? Why don't you want, if I'm a plant manager, like we said, 1,000 people, then 2,000 people. Remember that check and balance that was on both of those slides. HR's role is to check and balance. So they determine the competencies, the behaviors. Then they have that check, and they're the check and balance. Because if I'm in trouble, we're opening a new plant or we got a new product or something, and I'm struggling. I need a leader that's going to get in there and take action and get results. And so be it if I usually say, some dead bodies are left in the trail or something. I need some results and I need them now and I need them quickly. Well, the business is winning there, not the people. And, but again, if I'm a plant production manager and I'm under a lot of stress, then that's going to be my choice potentially. But the system can't allow that. The system has to check and balance that. So that's why I'm not able to promote the person that's going to get those results, but at the expense of the people. So Toyota, and I interviewed the Toyota HR lead that was our coach, and he put in there that when they came to America, that he demanded that be in there because he knew kind of the power and the production that making the decisions, and that the people wouldn't necessarily win if we didn't have that check and balance. And I tell you, when I work with other companies in America, no other company in America that I know of has made that decision to give that power or that ownership of that system to HR. I've gotten to a point where it's done as a partnership, and that's I've learned to be okay with that. And most times that's worked, but sometimes it doesn't, because sometimes the production still overrides and wins that battle or that argument or whatever. And so at Toyota, the people always won the argument because that was the system. And then it was evaluated, and if Mike's people score was no good, then I was not promotable, just plain and simple. So I hope you see how, again, those systems are really important, and that's where Toyota would say, hey, if somebody, and I've heard those discussions in other places, well, just promote Sean. We know he's got some rough people skills, but he gets results. Everybody knows how Sean is. We can live with that. No, 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 no. So again, unless you declare a winner and then your system set up to reinforce and check and balance that, then we're going to have some incorrect leaders or incorrect behaviors, or out of standard, I should say, happen. So again, this is a pretty powerful stuff. So I don't know if you're in the role or scope to impact that, but I wanted to just give a little bit of insight into that. Again, HR system. And then when we can take those, like we said earlier, take all those competencies through everything: promotion, performance evaluation, compensation, career planning, etc. Now, obviously, we're reinforcing those behaviors and driving those systems to keep getting those behaviors. It's not an accident, very intentional. This is an interesting slide. Could spend a lot of time on this one. I'm not going to, but spend a little bit of time. And that's, we talked about the servant leadership, I know, last time, and we had the upside down triangle. Then we had again, that value stream, and that's that you see the customer value, the input and the customer value. Then we have our servant leadership. Now we also have on there those support systems. So that's a key point on this slide. So you see safety, HR, quality, the CI team, whatever, maintenance, engineering. So at Toyota, those were supporting functions. Some companies call those support functions. Most, in my experience, do not. And so a lot of times we'll have the argument or the discussion or whatever on who works for who, or who drives this organization. Is it engineering? Are we an engineering organization? Are we whatever? And and remember, as a leader, we said, I work for my people. And then I learned with, my promotions and my cross-functional things when I was over engineering or I was over maintenance, we worked for production. Because remember, production is the value stream that touches the customer. Production is the highest quality, lowest cost, shortest amount of time. So all those supporting functions should be doing just that, supporting operations. Now, we'll be talking about that more next time when we talk about problem solving and daily management. That when we have those daily huddles with the support functions there with production. Remember we said servant leadership? And if I'm at the Gemba and I'm talking to my people, then I'm saying, how can I help you is the servant leadership question. And so the servant leadership question we were taught as a support function when we go to those daily, weekly huddle meetings. How can I help you? Am I helping you? How am I doing helping you? How can I better help you? Boy, does the operations appreciate that. Production appreciate that. And again, that's, and Toyota would say that's CI and respect for people, because that's helping the team member. I had an engineer one time, I just remembered this, so I'm going to say it as I remember it. Remember, we said, hey, we want you at the end of this to be able to give a behavior that you're going to change. And I go around the room, I give everybody a minute to talk about what behavior they're going to change and what system they're going to work on when they go back home. And so we had an engineer that shared out, and he said, I am going to change my behavior. When I go to the floor, I'm going to ask those operators, how can I help them? And he started welling up in his eyes and saying, I have never asked them that. I've never asked them what they thought. I've never asked them their opinion. I've always given them my answers, my engineering expertise, unquote. And man, what an impact. So that's the partnership. That's the trust and respect that we're trying to get, again, through that servant leadership. So I hope you catch the servant leadership, again, is individual and organizational. So he gave an individual behavior there. But the organizational system is that setting up the structure where those functions are just that, support functions. All right, so also on this slide, we've got team members and we've got team leaders and group leaders. So Toyota would call that the work team. And how critical that work team is. Now, I was told this was based on the U.S. Army after World War II and things, on having that rule of 5 and reporting to 5. And if you have more than 5 people, how can you really build a relationship of trust and respect? How can you develop them? So Toyota went with that 1-to-5 ratio. Now I get into a lot of discussions and things on that. So I always tell people, don't run back home and say we need a 1-to-5 ratio. What you want to think about is, what is the role? Again, remember we said that's the deal on the people thing, is what is the role of the team member? What is the role of the team leader? What is the role of the group leader? Now we can do our plan, do, check, act, and work on our systems to have them actually be performing their role. But if you don't ever say what it is you want, then again, no standard, no problem. So again, team members, we talked about that on our true north, that of course we want them to work safely with quality, right, and productivity and cost, etc. But remember we said it's not only their job to do their job and to do their job well, it's also their job to improve their job. Remember that one? So that's big. But we say that's the role of the team member. So again, do standard work, but then identify problems and then help to, improve solve the problem and improve the process. Now, team leader role. So the role of the team member, the team leader, we talked about standard work last time. So the team leaders, they own the standard work. Now they're getting input from the team members and they're developing the team members to be able to develop standard work, etc. But the team leader owns that standard work. So obviously they don't need to know how to write it and develop it, and then they're going to teach their team members to do that as well. So remember we said, hey, I don't remember because again, I've had different conversations since last time, but we said, Toyota gave us, the Japanese gave us standard work and then gave us a scoreboard, which we'll look at next time, and then gave us problem solving, which we'll look at next time in more depth. Those 3 things were the first 3 systems that we really drove. So the team leader obviously has a role in all 3 of those. So they need to know how to develop standard work, and then they're checking it as part of their team leader standard work. Then they're problem solving based on the scoreboards or based on the abnormalities. So again, that sounds so simple. Okay, team leaders do standard work, develop standard work, and then they solve problems. You don't know the hours and however many things I've spent with different organizations on those 2 things. Having a team leader that understands and develops standard work, and having a team leader that actually understands and facilitates problem solving. Now, in my plant of 1,000, again, out of 1-to-5, I had 200 approximately team leaders. So again, I'm hoping you see the math here, like that dude that had that aha moment that I'm getting everybody problem solving instead of just me and my 2 managers or my CI team or my couple engineers. It's like I'm getting the numbers here. Now I got 200 team leaders out there. I called them my army of problem solvers. I forget, again, apologize. I forget if I use this example, but I was at a food company and we go by, and we'll talk more about the hour by hour chart next time. What should be happening? How many should we produce this hour? How many we actually produce? And And so there was a gap, and there was 20 minutes down on 1 hour. And I was in Mexico, so it was in Spanish. So we got over the team leader, and they could help me translate. And it said down because printer down. So we'll talk about problem solving next time. So problem solving, we ask why, right? Why was the printer down? Well, it ran out of ink. We had to change the cartridge. Like, why did it run out of ink, and why did it take 20 minutes? And then they stopped me, and they almost, because like they were almost kind of saying to me, like, you're being disrespectful, but they were like, they didn't say that, but they were like, the team leader is not used to these questions. And then basically said, it's not the team leader's job to solve problems. It's the team leader's job to keep the line running. So he did his job. He just was explained why it took why they were down 20 minutes. It's not his job to find out why and to get better next time. So I was like a hit with a 2x4. So we went back to the room afterwards. I'm like, okay, so we got a question to ask here. Do you want it to be his job to problem solve? And I'm thankful they answered yes. So we've been, I think, about 4 or 5, I think we did talk about this last time, 4 or 5 months now with this company. And there's 4 different businesses, 4,000 people or something. And the team leader's job now is to, now again, that's standard work. Now, we talked about that last time, right? The difference between standard work and work instructions or technical instructions or engineering instructions. True standard work, true operator standard work with the steps and the time and the safety, the quality, the productivity, and the cost. And then now problem solving. And they're doing it. And then they're reporting out to the executives. And it's amazing. It's amazing the development of those people and the respect that they're being given, and then the pride that they're exuding when they're reporting out to these executives, the standards they're setting, the injuries they're preventing, the defects they're preventing, and then the ones they're solving that do happen. I'm doing my best to describe the magic of that. And again, and then they show the impact to the OEE or to the defects or the safety or the downtime. So if you don't get anything from this session, I hope you kind of get a little bit of insight into those roles of your people: the team member, the team leader, the supervisor. And then we do our attracting, so they don't get promoted unless they're demonstrating some competency towards that. And then we're going to develop them to engage in that on a daily basis. You will be amazed. And again, who loses with that? Who loses when we have those team leaders now that are taking pride in their work and they're solving problems and they're developing their people? I hope you get it. I hope you can see it. I know we're getting a little bit close on time here, so I want to wrap up because I love your questions. So I hope you got some chats and some questions going here. We'll do about last 5-10 minutes of that. Okay, so group leaders, same thing. Now most times the companies will have the supervisor that they'll agree that their role is to solve problems. That doesn't mean that they're actually solving problems. We'll talk about that next time. They're usually firefighting, but the standard, the expectation is usually there that they're problem solvers. Where we've gotten the biggest impact is with the team leader and team member, because a lot of organizations don't respect them. Literally, like the Japanese would say, like, that's disrespectful to not engage those people in the development of standard work and then in the improvement in the problem solving. Like, that's disrespectful. And again, it's not doing too much for your CI and your continuous improvement if you don't have those people engaged. So what are your systems? Again, to attract people who want that, who want to be engaged, who care. And then to give them the opportunity to do it, and then to give them the opportunity to let you know if we're not doing it. So that's part of that check and balance. Again, I think maybe we'll spend a couple minutes on that because we only have one more slide. Part of that check with those was that communication meetings, of not just of the, because we had our daily huddle meetings, right, with our safety, quality, productivity of the product, et cetera. Then we had our weekly lunch boxes, our monthly town halls on how are we doing with our culture? How are we doing with respecting you? What issues are you having? Are we hearing you? Are we reacting or responding? So it was our check and balance meetings. And they weren't always easy meetings. I tell people, I had 1,000 people, so I couldn't have 1,000, but I did 4 meetings. I had, about 250 each of the meetings. I was like, those weren't always easy meetings, going in front of 250 people and asking, what problems are you having? Because I found out they let you know that you had that culture, like we said, where it was safe to bring problems, then they would bring them. And sometimes we could send it back to, okay, what's your role in that? And other times it was, well, no, that's one of the supporting functions is we have a gap. So let's get those supporting functions, HR, engineering, or whoever here. I usually tell the story on one, because again, I'm trying to give you some insight into the people systems on this one. So we talked about the hiring and the promoting, again, according to those competencies. This one was, I had, again, one of those meetings of 250 people, and I asked, are anybody issues, at the end. We would do 2-way on those one. We'd have an hour. So for the first hour, I would give the company information. I'd give the quality and the safety numbers and everything, from or the economy or different things. And then the last half hour was for them. So then we're winding down one meeting, or we're going, and somebody said, I've got a problem with my muffler machine. It's not putting on the muffler, da 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 da. I said, well, let's hold that one. Why don't we, I'll go with you afterwards on that one, because let's get the ones that impact everybody. And it was like, okay. So then we went on to those other questions. So then the meeting ended, and I was wrapping up my stuff, and I was going to find the guy, and he was walking out the door. Back, he was a second shift, so he was heading out to the line. And so I literally had to run up and catch him halfway out the hallway to the plant. And I said, hey, where are you going? I said, well, I wanted to meet with you after the meeting. And he looked at me like, well, I didn't think you were serious. I'm like, well, yeah, that's why I said it. Come on, let's go. So remember the go and see. So we went out to see the muffler machine, and I was asking him some questions and things. And he turns to me, he says, somewhere in the middle of my question, he says, man, dude, you really give a shit, don't you? And I tell people that story, and I tell them like that was one of my biggest compliments and memories. I told you, I usually tell the no good stories of the Japanese, but that one was a good one. So I really appreciated that, because it was like, you care, like, yes, I care. And he wanted to be heard, and he didn't feel like he was being heard. So then I had to be careful, right, that I didn't just skip the chain of command and just fix his problems for him. So then I was asking questions about the system. Well, who did you talk to? How did you identify the problem? What happened? So then I was able to work with his supervisor and his engineering and maintenance and things on where did the system break down, right? In order to correct that he would have to bring that issue to a town hall meeting. So anyway, I hope you get, again, some insight into the people systems, to that respect and trust, and that culture where everybody feels valued, everybody feels validated, and everybody's able to contribute, right? All right. The last slide there is, again, just remember we said like we got the upside down triangle, and we've got the diamond model, we call it. So we still have to manage and we lead, right? So we manage systems, we manage things, and then we lead our people. And so the team members, again, that developing the team members. So you get a little bit of insight there. So team members, we're going to be working on fundamental skills. So again, that's kind of standard work, and how do we use an air tool and different things. And then again, standard work, job instruction is a way of how we train people, 5S and things. So some basics, right? Then we got the team leader, group leader. Again, they're managing those systems of standard work and process improvement. And then EMDS, FMDS, and TBP is Toyota problem solving. We'll talk about that next time. The floor management, again, as a manager. So my point is there that these skills they build on each other. And that's also why in this picture I talk about promote from within. This is why Toyota likes to promote from within, that they wouldn't go outside and promote a manager. The manager would come from a group leader who would have come from a team leader, who would have come from a team member, because these skills all build on each other. So first I'm going to learn, how to follow standard work and the importance of it. Then I'm going to learn how to develop it. Then I'm going to learn how to, as a team leader, how to manage that system. Now, as a group leader, I'll be, again, putting those systems together. So it builds. So promote from within was a principle, a true north of Toyota. I get into sometimes some discussions with people on, well, you want everybody promote from within? Don't we want some people that we're bringing from the outside? And so we got fresh set of eyes or whatever. It's like, well, we got people that we're bringing in as engineers, first level or whatever. So we got that outside, and we also have people that were rotating cross-functionally. There's plenty of opportunity for outside things. So we found a lot more value in promoting from within. And I recommend that as a KPI for our people discussion, people systems. What is our ability and that's a good check on our development systems of how many of our people are we promoting from within the organization, and how many are we going out. And again, the Japanese would say it would be disrespectful to go out and hire a manager off the street when we got however many hundred supervisors here. So whose fault is it that none of those, you're going to tell me none of those 200 are promotable to manager? Well, whose problem is that? So that was, again, one of those kind of two-way things where we're promote from within, and it was my responsibility to have those people promotable. And I can't get promoted unless I have people promotable but behind me. So very, very helpful in getting those, again, promotion systems. So let's take the last 5-7 minutes here and see what questions you got. Sean, if you can help on that. And
excellent. Thank you very, very much, Mike. I'm just trying to get I'm going to stop sharing. So yeah, thank you very much. There's been several requests for copies of today's session as well as the previous one. I think what I've really appreciated about today's one, I think it's really starting to bring the previous two sessions and everything together. I think it's all starting to fall into place. So I found that really interesting. There's also been requests for pertinent literature, and I've recommended your book. I posted the link from Amazon in the chat. I don't know if there's any other way. If there's any other literature that you think could help cement some of the points that you've made. Obviously, like I say, there is your book with Leica. Obviously, Toyota culture, the heart and soul of the Toyota way. But if there's anything else, you can either mention it here, or we can just include it in the output comms.
Yeah, I can send a couple things. I was thinking about that. I've got a Q12, they call it, like 12 questions that these participants could give to their people, formally or informally, and then also have a role of a floor leader, a pretty good little document that I can send, that you can send out.
Brilliant, awesome, brilliant. But there is question here from Bobby from, I think it's Kway. Bobby, I'm going to give you permission to talk, and maybe you can ask your question directly. So if you just unmute, you should be able to talk. Yeah, there we are, Bobby. You can ask your question.
Hi there, Sean. Hi there, everybody. Thanks very much. I just actually, the question I had was just which I thought was quite interesting for us is the concept of HR being involved in quite sort of extensively in terms of decision making, especially from a people perspective. And I was just thinking to myself, how does one get HR involved, on a regular basis in the factory? I mean, I was just going to ask if you had any suggestions on how one gets HR involved when, so you're on your day-to-day or hourly decision making, in order to make sure that that your business is continually people orientated and people friendly, and that it's not making decisions that are just based on money and not taking into account the heart.
Yeah, very good, very good. Boy, I could spend another hour on that question, so figuring out how I can do it in a minute. So I have a larger HR workshop that I do, and we talk about HR's role as strategic partner, business partner, team member advocate, and process expert. And I even align those with the 4 Ps. So strategic partner I put with the purpose one, right? So the first thing is are they even at the table? A lot of times they're not even at the table. We haven't invited them.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing. Then the business partner. So again, a lot of times they're not invited to the strategic planning meetings. They're not part of those business discussions. So make them that. And then that team member advocate. So again, and most of the times they have that one. But the trick is, how do we do business partner and team member advocate? So anyway, enough on that one. And then they're responsible for, lean or CI within their processes. Right. So a lot of times we'll talk about lean for HR or HR for lean. Your question was more HR for lean, but we still want lean in HR so that their payroll system is high quality, low cost service of time. So on your daily one, the best thing I can tell you, Bobby, is that, and we'll talk about this more next time, our daily huddles, and we're going to have different levels of huddle meetings. So we're going to have that work team, and then we're going to have that value stream team. Remember we said how the value stream is how we're going to help you. How are we supporting you? And so the biggest thing on the HR one is do we have our people here? And in America right now, that's a problem because we have more jobs than we have people, and we have a lot of turnover. And so HR is accountable every day to come and say, what is our percent to staffing plan, and what is our percent to daily attendance? Those are 2 different systems, right? So do we have the right number of people here according to our staffing plan? So that's the hiring system. And then do we have the right number of people here according to our daily attendance? So now that's vacation and all the other stuff. So that's a different system. But those are 2 things. Those are 2 KPIs. So we'll talk about that next time. Remember, we said the supporting functions. So each of them should have a KPI that tells us how well they're supporting the value stream. And those would be 2 examples of HR. So every day they come to that meeting and they give a report how we're doing. That would be one quick way. And again, that production will appreciate you for doing that.
No, that's excellent. Thank you. Useful information. It also does require a lot of thought about how you would integrate that into your teams. I love the idea of spreading the word through the factory and having the army. I like your army of problem solvers. I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, that's good. That's a larger system, but again, like in Mexico, that's exactly, and HR is involved obviously in that. But it's interesting that because they're not used to that and they don't have the information, and so we are having some tough discussions on do you want that role? And then in some of it, they're saying, no, let's let CI do that. We'll let CI, take that training of those team leaders or different things. Now, Toyota HR would have been doing it. so I always say, I don't care who's doing it, as long as we identify the one somebody's doing it, right?
Yeah.
And so that this company's having exactly that discussion right now, who owns what, but at least they've acknowledged the roles and the systems to attract, select, and develop those roles.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Bobby. A question from my side. I mean, I really like you reiterated it from sort of the first session that the term of the sort of intentional culture, and I really like that as a concept. And in terms of building on that, what are the processes of evaluating, let's call it whether you, and I also really like the concept of recruiting from within, but when you're recruiting, developing people from within or without, aligning, that intentional culture with their principle. How do you make sure that alignment is in place? Ultimately, it's about getting the fit right.
Yeah, it's again back to that system. What's our hiring system? What's our promotion system? And I believe we defined systems before, right? That we have a standard, which is a process, standardized process. We're measuring that in terms of safety, quality, productivity, right? Time, speed, delivery, et cetera. And then we're coming back and checking those KPIs, and then we're adjusting the system based on those KPIs. I think I told you my nonprofit's involved with the hiring system at Toyota. So that hiring system we've been involved since 2000, so 24 years. And it's changed probably not 24 times, at least 12 times. Because it's this continual PDCA of to get the behaviors, like where did we fail, where were the weak points, and how can we shore it up. So having that system built is what I would say, and doing plan, do, check, act.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mark. I'm not seeing any more hands raised at the moment. So I'm going to look at sort of closing the session off. What I will do is also encourage people, if there's additional questions that you would like maybe Mike to cover in the final session, I think we can definitely look at mentioning those to him, and that would be great. So Mike, from us, thank you very much again for a great session. I really sort of again took a lot away from today's session, and I think really cemented some of the key points. Again, I mean, you've said it from the no standard, no problem, that's sort of stuck in my mind, and I think I've been referring to it quite often over the last couple of months. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
Yeah, and I like your idea, Sean, for questions. So because it's our last session, the questions can be from any of the first 3 sessions, or if we didn't cover it in the first 3 sessions and you thought we were, now's the time to get those, because it's our last session, so we can use that time accordingly.
And then just from my side, obviously, I'd like to, extend thanks to obviously yourself, Mark, again for, facilitating today's session. I think the series has been really good. I'm looking forward to the last one, but I'm also sad that there is just one more sort of formal opportunity, but we can obviously look at that going forward in terms of how we engage with you. But thank you very much. Obviously, I'd like to thank everybody that participated in today's session. I think a lot of people are requesting the recordings from the previous sessions just so they can go and recap on that, and that's great. And obviously, I'd like to thank the public sector funders for their involvement. I have launched the Zoom poll just in terms of getting your insight in terms of today's session. What we've also mentioned is we've got a skills program in place, which a lot of focus is on what we refer to as team leaders and emerging leaders. So there's a lot of focus on that, and a lot of the items you've touched on, Mark, today, as well as the previous sessions, are contained in our development programs that our firms are entitled to, or that they're able to get benefit from. So I've also included that in the poll. If you would like to find out a bit more about our programs, if you're not currently involved, please let us know and we'll contact you. And yeah, it's also mentioned, there's also a survey. And then again, just to mention again, on the 21st of August, so it's over a month's time, in a month and a bit's time, we'll have the final session. But on the 1st of August, we'll have the session on the net zero. How can your business achieve net zero? Which again is very, very important. In South Africa, a lot of firms are trying to still understand how they're going to get to terms with this, but it is becoming more and more important. And obviously at a global level, it's becoming very, very important. Yeah, thanks, Mike. I don't know anything from your side in closing.
I'm good, thanks.
All right. So there is one hand raised here. I'm just going to give them a quick opportunity. Is it Malatsi?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the session. Firstly, it was really informative. mostly because this is exactly what I'm going through in my business at the moment. I'm hiring, I'm starting to set KPIs for the current team that we have, as well as, you know, the new people that we'll be hiring. What I'm struggling with the most is just setting up the KPIs, especially because, you know, in a clothing manufacturing plant, we've got different, I guess, you know, jobs, because we've got the machinists, which are on the production floor, but then you've also got people in the offices, which is, you know, your procurement, and setting up KPIs is just resulting to be a little difficult for me. Do you have any templates maybe that you can share, or any advice around that? Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the questions. I think we will talk more next session about the, you know, the business KPIs. At first, I thought you were going towards people KPIs, you know, about whether it's turnover or the high, you know, how do we measure the hiring system, that type of thing, or onboarding. So I would encourage that, you know, again, for this session. And then next session, we'll talk about, I think, more what your question is, you know, for procurement or whatever thing. So my general answer, and we'll hold the specifics till next time, would be, again, but the first KPIs I want for those functional support departments are, how are they supporting the value stream? And so we have to talk to the value stream to say, what, how do I get supported by them? And or, you know, production. So procurement maybe is not the best example, but certainly HR with the people, you know, supply chain, are the right parts there at the right time? Now, I was with a company, you know, so then you got, does the vendor get it to the cross dock? Then does the cross dock get it to the warehouse on site? And then does the warehouse get it to the floor? So there was 3 different owners to answer that question to production. And actually procurement was part of that first chain. So that's where I would go first with my KPIs, the impact to the production. Because remember, that's our value stream, that's who's paying our bills. So do they have the right parts at the right time would be in a supply chain example. The quality parts, so then we get into potentially procurement or quality. And then the equipment, do we have the equipment running? So now we got maintenance and engineering. And then we talked about HR, are the people there, and then are the people there trained? So that's what would be my first line of thinking for your support function KPIs on how are we supporting the production. Now we can go back to their specific processes and look at some other KPIs. But my first one, I want to be on the support.
All right. Thank you. Hopefully that answers or partly answers the question. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. And yeah, I will follow up you in relation to that additional, let's call it literature and reference material, as well as, you know, 1 or 2 other things. Otherwise, from my side, thank you again for your involvement in today's session. Enjoy the rest of your morning on your side of the world. Trust the weather's good over there. And yeah, otherwise, take care, and looking forward to obviously engaging with you in a month and a bit's time, and obviously for everybody to be involved in that particular session.
Very good.
Thank you. Take care.